Hey. Oh, you're muted. You're on mute.
There you go.
Great. So they're gonna. Yeah, sorry. It turns out we have a lot of problems with Zoom bombing, and so for classes, some professors make it so that if you have to use your CSULB email, and so she didn't remember that. So I set this up, and they're all going to join us in a minute or so. So how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Exciting.
Great.
Yeah. This is a student, so.
Yeah, they're really looking forward to it.
Great. So, this class is, I think it looked like it was an accounting class or a managerial accounting class.
There was a managerial accounting class they were doing, and the professor Ping Lin is going to be joining us too.
Perfect. Great.
And then I have the professor that taught the Introduction to Technology course is also joining us. Mohammed Abdelhamid is going to join us also.
Perfect.
So he's an IS professor.
Oh, okay, good.
So, well, anyways, hopefully they can get in. It's never.
I didn't have any problem.
Yeah, I've never had a problem like this. You know, it's like I'm so used to. Well, you probably know this. You live on Zoom, right?
Right.
It's either Zoom or Teams.
That's right. So, I think we're all living that same life right now. So.
Yeah. So did you have a nice holiday?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, obviously we didn't do anything, which is, spend time at home,
Yeah.
Did some cleanup around the house.
Yeah. Hi, Mohammed. How are you? Hope you're on mute.
I'm good. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So Mohammed, I can introduce you now. This is Michael Wang. He's the CIO and VP of Digital Innovation at Epson. This is Mohammed Abdelhamid, who is an information systems professor, and he taught the first course that our students took, which was an Introduction to Technology.
Excellent.
Course. So,
hey, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Yeah. Great.
Here they come. Hi, Ping. Let's see.
I have to unmute. Yes.
Yeah. So let me introduce you to Michael. Michael, this is Ping Lin. She's an accounting professor, and she was actually teaching them, like you guessed, managerial accounting. Ping, this is Michael Wang. He's the CIO and VP of Digital Innovation at Epson. So he's going to be talking to the students this morning, or actually he's going to be responding to them, because they said, I just wanted to let you know, they put together a set of questions. We really wanted to make sure they were engaged, put together a set of questions, and I sent them to you. So, and there weren't any problems with the questions? You're okay with all of them?
Yeah, look, the questions look fine to me. Yeah. So,
great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. So hopefully they start coming in.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I don't know where everybody lives, but I'm in Long Beach, right overlooking the port, and we have fires from north of us with the smoke coming in.
Yeah, the Lake Forest. I actually have somebody in my department that was evacuated for the second time in the last few months because of those fires near the Lake Forest area. So yeah, I felt really bad for him. But it's not just evacuation; it's all this soot, and apparently it just gets inside your house because no matter how sealed your windows are, it just it's a huge cleanup. So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So we get emails from the university telling us what the air quality is. And yesterday, I think it was over 150 parts per million.
Wow.
So it's not good air quality.
Okay. No, yeah, I think the first round of fires, I live in San Marino, if you know where that is. It's near South Pasadena. So we had.
So there's been some fires up there, haven't there, this year?
Yeah, earlier this year, and we had some impact from the air quality, but not anywhere close. So it's just really the air. So.
Yeah. So I assume you gave them the link, Ping?
I am right now.
Oh, okay.
think they still have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So let's Zoom meeting. Let's see. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
During the fires in, what was it, in September, we wanted to get away from here, so we drove up to Oregon. We figured go up there. My family has a home up there that we can use.
Great.
We went up there, and there were fires up there, and we ended up in the middle of a fire where the air quality was over 600 parts per million.
Wow.
You could not see anything. It was like night for a week.
Wow.
I've never seen it that bad.
Incredible. All right, looks like people are coming.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. So Cynthia said she hasn't received the Zoom meeting link. Let me send it to her.
Is she in my class?
Yeah, Cynthia De Leon.
And I just sent an email. She should. I'll post it on the course website just in case.
Okay. Okay, let me see. Okay, I also emailed it to her.
Okay.
I think we're pretty close, aren't we?
Yep. It's not you. Ingrid, I think we can start. It's
okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad we're able to do this. What I want to do first of all is introduce our speaker today. And then when we're done with all this, then we'll turn it over to you for your questions that you have for. So this is Michael Wang. He's the CIO and the VP of Digital Innovation at Epson. And I was very fortunate to meet him via the chief counsel at Epson that's on our MBA advisory board. And so, excuse me, he was kind enough to do for me is to send me some information about why he felt disruptive technology was so important for MBAs to be prepared for the job market, for not just a job market tomorrow, but in the 5-10 years down the road. So what I want to do is just read this quick quote to you that he said, and then I'm going to turn it over to all of you. So what he said was, I think MBAs would benefit greatly from a general background in data science, understanding that data is a new currency in business and that the ability to exploit the data available to you as an organization, from enterprise systems, IoT devices, customers, competitors, these are all key competitive advantages. So real data science gets to be highly technical, but giving MBAs an understanding of what is possible through data science will allow them to attack business issues, devise new business models, and improve products and services as a result. And then he also said that under this umbrella, you would include data visualization and big data analytics. So all of this should sound very familiar to you, right? And the thing that I know that Mohammed has stressed, and we've stressed, and I've stressed too, is that we don't expect you to become the people that have all the technical knowledge, like being able to program in Python and things like that. But you do have to be able to understand what people on, let's say, your team are doing, and are they using the right tools to solve a business problem. So what I want to do now is turn it over and say, Michael, if you have a few words you'd like to say before I turn it over to the students. Or
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Martin. I really appreciate you inviting me to speak to all of you. And it's really a pleasure for me to be able to engage with MBA students. I remember me going through an MBA program, attending Saturday classes. I did this kind of, I was still working full time as I did my MBA at UCLA. So that brings back some memories. That was, I graduated 16 years ago from my MBA. So that tells you a little bit of how long ago that was. I was reflecting on that, and that was, wow, it's a long time. But I guess before we start into the questions, I usually like to just give a short background of who I am, so you kind of get to know me a little bit. I'll start from the beginning. I was born actually in Taipei, Taiwan, and I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. Right, so I grew up in the Silicon Valley in the 80s and 90s. That's where we landed. My father worked for HP. And I think very early on, because Silicon Valley, I saw kind of value creation and business, being created through the intersection of, business ideas and the application of technology, right? So that was always kind of something that was with me from an early age. And I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley. I did a double major in economics and political science, which is, not technical at all. So I think technology remained an interest to me, but I also wanted to work in business, right? So when I graduated, I actually went into, at the time it was the big 6 accounting firms doing consulting work. So I worked actually for 3 of the big 6, which now are the big 4, Price Waterhouse, Anderson, and KPMG, right? So I did a mix of business process and technology consulting. And then that was in the 90s, where there was a big wave of technology implementations with ERP systems, and I was involved in a lot of those projects. So I learned very quickly, saw a variety of businesses, and also a variety of companies and work cultures and industries. So like many consultants do, they eventually do leave consulting because their lifestyle is a bit hectic when it comes to travel and hours. So I went to work for Pioneer Electronics in information technology as a shared service business organization. That's when I started my MBA. I thought it was very important for me to, I think for you as well, to round out kind of my business knowledge and education. So I did that while working full time at Pioneer. Graduated in 2004, as I mentioned earlier. I've been with Epson for the last 12 years. I am responsible for all of the typical IT functions as it comes to the company, between infrastructure, applications, security, privacy. So I wear multiple hats there. And then this past year, our CEO asked me to wear yet another hat, which is be responsible for digital innovation, kind of driving digital transformation at Epson, where I'm now working directly on, how do we apply technology to our product development and create new products and also new business models to drive our business. So that's a little short capsule on me and who I am. So hopefully that rounds out kind of your understanding of where I'm from and my background. So I guess I'll turn it over to you to ask me the questions, and I'll do my best to give you my thoughts and perspective.
Great. So who goes first?
Should we go in a team order or?
Sure, that's probably the easiest, because what I did is that I assigned the teams to the order in which the questions are arranged. So why don't you just do that?
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Martin, and thank you also, Michael, for joining us this Saturday. I'm sure it's your day off, hopefully. But I'm part of Team 1. This consists of Lindsay, Angela, and Jane. And my name is Christian. So I guess, first question to ask for you is, how does Epson approach risk control regarding cybersecurity? And two-part question, have there been any significant threats during your tenure there?
Great. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think your question shows that you do have an understanding of cybersecurity, which is that it is really about risk management at the end of the day. It's like any other risk that any enterprise faces. I always tell our CEO and everyone that would listen that it's not a matter of if you'll be breached, it's a matter of when you'll be breached. So when you think of it in that way, then it's really about managing your risk so that when you have the invariable cybersecurity incident, that you can contain that risk as much as possible and that you're prepared to manage that risk, right? Because you can triple, quadruple, my security budget and you still will not be risk-free, right? There's just so many variables within your control and outside of your control. And you guys have all seen just the rise in cybersecurity incidents over the last couple of years, and it's just getting worse, right? So anybody that has the illusion that you can spend your way into 100% risk-free environment is under a delusion. So I think when you look at risk, you have to evaluate, first of all, what kind of business you are. Do you hold sensitive information? Sometimes you're a data processor. So if your business is processing sensitive information, you obviously have more risk in terms of exposure. You have more risk in terms of, if you do have a breach, and you're a bigger target for companies or for hackers that may want to get this sensitive information, right? So I think you have to evaluate where you are on the risk spectrum, right? So financial services companies obviously hold a lot of sensitive information, so they tend to spend a lot more money on that stuff. Other types of companies who maybe don't deal with consumers directly may have less risk, right? Because they're now not holding consumer records, and there's been a lot of laws around consumer privacy and consumer data access, data subject access rights to information, California CCPA, et cetera. So you have to look at your risk profile, and then you can decide kind of where you need to be, right? And also when you look at risk, there's now, many industry frameworks, right? Like NIST or CIS. And those of you who are into cybersecurity will understand some of these frameworks. But you also really need what I call a defensible security strategy, right? Which is to say, I need to be able to demonstrate that I have all the components of a good and sound information security strategy, so that when the breach happens and I'm now a light is shining on me and my company in terms of what, was Epson negligent in our practices, you have to be able to say no, right? Epson did everything that was reasonable within its control, good information security practices. That way you limit also the liability that your company may have when it comes to a breach, because the lawsuits will come, right? And the first thing people try to claim is Epson was negligent, right? So you don't want to be, a Sony, which when they were hacked, it's like, hey, they had unencrypted passwords on their server. That's a problem, right? That's just gross negligence, right? So you never want to be in that position, because now you open the door and you talk about managing risk. That is now massive risk to you as a company, right? So you want to make sure you have a defensible security strategy. So anybody from the outside looking in on you will be able to see that that you did what was proper and right, and it was based on industry standards, right? And then it's also a combination. A lot of people also think about cybersecurity, think, oh, it's just technology. I need to implement the right filters and the right systems and intrusion detection and threat detection software and appliances to defend the corporation. But it's also about thinking about how you're staffing and how you're monitoring. What are the policies you have? What are the trainings that you're providing to the employees, right? You also need to be able to show you are constantly training your employee base, because the number one vector for cybersecurity is actually not, anything that related to systems. It's actually people, right? Phishing attempts, right? Phishing is number one, right? So you guys all know that, I hope. So the training is extremely important. And then you also need to make sure you bring in things like cybersecurity insurance, right? So that you do have that kind of in your portfolio of your cybersecurity strategy. So so hopefully that gives you some of my thoughts on how we're managing risk. And then your second question, which was, have we had any significant threats during my tenure? The dashboard we see, I see every day, we are constantly being attacked, right? We literally have thousands, if not tens of thousands of attacks on our public website every day, right? We have had incidents where, you know, there's been attempted, you know, phishing attempts and whatnot. So I don't think we are any different than any other company in that regard. I think Epson also, you know, just by virtue of us being a large global multinational corporation, there are people who are targeting us as well, right? So, so threats are there all the time. Knock on wood, we haven't had anything that was a breach at this point. But like I said, I am preparing our company, and I have the policies and processes in place to contain that breach when it does happen, to limit the damage from that event. So when it happens, you know, you're able to recover your business more quickly. You're able to limit, you know, the liability that's associated with that breach.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And how about number 2?
Hello, my name is
Hey.
Stephanie Machalian. Thank you, Dr. A. Thank you, Ingrid, and Professor Pin. And thank you, Michael, for being here and sharing your insight and knowledge with us. My team consists of Robert, Ashley, and Beatrice, as well as myself. My question is related to data ethics. So as data collection methods advance, there's a high priority on data ethics and security, which you touched upon. How does Epson value data ethics, and what are some of the metrics in place in order to make sure the data gathered does not negatively impact the consumer? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very important question you ask, and it's something I think, you know, companies are very creative. I think especially technology companies who are kind of at the forefront of, you know, new business models and new ways of doing business. You know, the law is always a little bit behind, right, when it comes to that, right? So you look at companies that have this, you know, very early on, you know, some of the more forward-looking companies, they knew the value of data and what that could mean for their business very, very early on. And from there, they were able to create new businesses, right? You even think about what Google had done very early on in terms of ad targeting, targeting ads based on the data they collected, right? That is now, oh, of course you do that, but that was not necessarily, you know, something that people thought of, and they were kind of the early thinkers in that, right? So that means they were using this data in a way that benefited them as a business. They weren't even necessarily breaking the law, right? But if you look at it, it's, oh, that's just kind of intuitively made you feel like they were doing something wrong, even though they may not even be breaking the law, right? Even today, right, where you have all these trackers on websites and whatnot, I'm sure they're all compliant with the law, but you as a consumer or as a user of that site, you think, oh, I'm not sure I want them to know about that, or I don't want like that. The fact that I searched for something on Google, now I'm seeing targeted ads on Facebook, right? And they're following. Or I went to this website to browse for this, and now I see it everywhere I look, right? I'm sure that's all happened to us, right? It just kind of feels bad. It feels a little bit creepy and not right, right? So I think you've seen the law try to catch up in some ways to these new business models, right? And putting some limitations around how these companies are able to do these things, but also now giving you as the consumer's rights in terms of knowing, like CCPA was a kind of a landmark legislation. I believe it's going to be, adopted by more states, and if not, something at the federal level. And you certainly are seeing internationally, you're seeing countries adopt more stringent privacy laws that gives you as the consumer the rights to know what a company is collecting. There's a data about you, the right for you to ask them to delete data they have about you, right? And to get a copy of the information they have, right? So hopefully those things will also, help limit now what companies try to do with that information that they have, right? So, but I think when you ask about data ethics, so it's about using the data in a way that certainly is compliant with the law, right? But certainly also, so that's, to me, that's the baseline. You need to be compliant with the law, right? You should not be breaking the law when it comes to your use of data. But I think there's probably something better you can do around, if you look at companies that are a bit better about things like that, like Apple, you can argue they do it from a marketing perspective as well, but, we value your privacy. We put limits on ourselves that's maybe even better than what the law says to really, because they value privacy and they value or they have some standards around how they are using that data, right? So for Epson, I think, when I look at how we use data, certainly we are compliant with the law, right? And we have a lot of measures in place to make sure that we are compliant. And we do kind of internal audits to do that, to follow the laws. But we also look at, when I look at how we use data, I also think about us as a company and how, what are our values as a company, right? So we have a certain statements. We have a corporate kind of management philosophy and management principles, right? That talks about making sure that we are an ethical company, right? That we comply with the law and that we delight our customers and that we value our customers' rights. So those principles, as a company, when I look at Epson, I like it because that's straight from the top, right? That's from the global CEO of the company, and that propagates down. And we're also very conscious of the idea of compliance and making sure that we have a compliance-oriented culture, right? And you can't say that about every company, unfortunately. So, so I don't know that I would work for a company that didn't have that as a value. So when you guys are looking at companies you would work for, I would also say, if that's important to you, you should really look for companies that have that as a corporate value, a stated public value, right? If you go to Epson's website, you'll see our corporate management philosophy and our management principle. It talks about being an ethical company, right? So, yeah. So hopefully that answers your question there. But when I look at how we use data, I always think about, if I were the consumer using Epson products, is this what I would want to happen, or this is how I would want my data to be used? So that's always something you should ask yourself as well.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So who's next?
Ashley with Team 2. Thank you, Michael, for joining us today on this different sort of platform. Another question, what can be done to minimize the wrong data input from daily operations to avoid garbage in and garbage out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's an interesting challenge for every company, I think, because there's so much data that we all deal with. Certainly, there's one, you can implement certain tools that help you keep data clean, right? So we have, tools in place that, for example, tries to find duplicate data and dedupes like consumer data, like if it's coming from two different places, or there are also tools that help you manage master data in a corporate environment, right? So master data management tools. So those are tools to keep kind of your core set of master data clean, and then there's kind of transactional data that you deal with. So we have policies in place like archiving strategies for data that, certain data that's becomes of a certain age, or once it falls out of use, we try to get it out of our systems, our core transactional systems. So also from a system performance perspective, it keeps things running smoothly, right? So those are kind of the few different technical ways to attack this problem of having bad data. And then I think more importantly is actually the idea of having a data governance committee or council within your company, right? So this is something that we had introduced really just about 3 years ago, formal data governance council, where we're looking at common data definitions within the company, right? So let's say, the idea of, even certain terms like net revenue, what does that mean, right? Certain departments may define, it sounds innocuous enough, right? It sounds like, oh, there should not be any differences in what somebody considers net revenue as a number. But in a company, different departments will find different ways to calculate what is, and then label it net revenue. So certainly now you have reports that don't say the same thing, even though two reports, they both have net revenue, you have two different numbers, right? So the Data Governance Council really tries to bring the departments together that own this data and create common definitions of certain key terms that your company uses to ensure that you don't get the situation where a report from one department is different, even though they have the same label, right? So that's a very important concept, and it, when it first starts in the company, it takes a lot of work to even get to these common definitions, and then you got to keep it. You kind of keep a living dictionary of these terms, and as new terms come up or as things need to be redefined, or right now we're looking at subscription revenue, some of the new things that out of the new business models that we're supporting now as a company. It's important to define these things up front, so that there's a common language also around it. That will keep things clean as well, consistent.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Hi, Michael. I'm Oscar Gonzalez.
Oscar.
Team 3 with Ari, Alejandra, and Adriana. And our question to you is, what is the most challenging aspect of using data science when visualizing company metrics?
Yeah, it's a good question. When you think about data science, and I think companies becoming more data driven, we had to undergo this evolution as well. And I think actually the hardest part is the building a culture that thinks about data and uses data, right? So the idea of data-driven culture. I think just looking at Epson's own evolution, right? I think there was an appreciation for data and numbers, but I think we had to go through a big leap to get to the point where we had methodologies and an expectation set by our CEO that we use data to make decisions, right? I think before we underwent this transformation, you look at justifying spending like on a marketing program, or looking at justifying systems implementation or whatnot. A lot of times people use qualitative metrics or or justification to sell the project or sell the idea, right? So I think to get to the data-driven piece of it, we had to set the expectation that we make decisions based on information that we can quantify, and then that meant that we had to build the systems and technology to support that idea of data-driven, right? So how do we calculate, the incremental revenue lift from a marketing program spend, right? That's a big question that has both a business and technology component. We're not perfect there yet, right? But so we're still in the journey. But I think to me the hard part is actually the CEO kind of putting his foot down, saying we need to be data driven. We need to, I'm not going to look at this unless you're backing this up with data, right? And then the challenge for the technology organization then is we need to support the build out of these metrics and be able to put that at people's fingertips so that it's not a big exercise every time somebody has to, figure out, did we get that incremental lift from that marketing program? So, that, I think that to me, that's the biggest challenge, is building that culture.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
Hi, Michael. My name is Daniel Bonilla. I am part of Team 4, which consists of Anna, Davi, Christina, Shasana. And to echo what everyone else is saying, we appreciate your time. I think this will add great value to our program, so thank you. Our question is, what are some of the major challenges you face, and what are you doing to help control risk for Epson?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think but I think it's a good question. I think we talked a bit about risk management early on as it relates to security, but I think it kind of broadly applies in the sense that you look at your risk profile and then you look at what you can do, putting together certainly the programs and the frameworks and the measurements to measure and control that risk. Right. And then again, it being a defensible risk management program, right? You need to be able to demonstrate you have the right elements of a standard-based risk management program. The major risks we face as a company, that's like I said, a big question. So I look at risk in a few different ways, right? I look at the risks that are related to compliance. That's kind of one big bucket, right? So compliance, not just about, it's about accounting compliance, regulatory compliance, all those different aspects, that you need to stay on top of as a company. I think you see every once in a while in the news that certain companies have to restate their revenue, in a huge way because they didn't follow certain standards or they were doing things that were not proper, and that was found out. So I think that to me is always a risk, is that somehow we are out of compliance with either, again, regulatory standards or otherwise, right? And I think standards are always changing, so I think that's something that needs to continue to be managed. And then I see risk in terms of business risk, right? Which is that I think companies today have to continue to reinvent themselves, or else they will be, left behind, right? So if you look at the idea, and I think some of you had some questions around digital transformation and digital innovation, I think you need to be looking for ways to grow revenue in new markets and new channels and new different ways of selling, new different ways of getting new types of customers. Because I think if you don't push yourself in that way, you can be left behind very, very quickly, right? I think the business world is full of examples of companies that don't transform and are no longer in existence or are shadow themselves, right? So I think there was some I think it was the Walmart CEO who kept a list of the top, I think, 10 retail companies in the United States from 10 years ago on his desk, and that was like most of those companies were gone. you know, you look at like Sears or those companies that used to be huge. It just shows. I think is a reminder to himself of how fast business changes, and how fast companies can be. Big company that you thought would never go out of business, go out of, right? So I think that to me is always a challenge, especially as a technology company, trying to stay on top of the accelerated innovation in that space, and how do we keep pace with the changes, and how do we push ourselves to be faster and get into new markets. So that to me is a risk that we always have to kind of manage.
All right. Who's next?
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm representing Team 5. My name is Ava. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Especially disruptive technology is particularly my interest. We would like to know if you could talk about the digital innovation process at Epson, how you digitize internal operations, new ways to engage users, bring new products to market, and most of all, staying on top of all the changes that's happening in the market.
I think this idea of digital transformation, certainly in the mainstream press has kind of really caught on. But I think, we organize our digital transformation initiatives in kind of 3 major buckets, right? So I think about digital products, digital experiences, and then digital processes and capabilities, right? And each of these are interrelated. So Epson is actually, I think close to 100-year-old company, right? So it's had to evolve a lot over time. And then when I look at where we've come from, we're primarily have been technology hardware company, right? That sells boxes to distribution or to the channel, and then we're kind of done, right? So we ship Best Buy a bunch of boxes, we ship, distributor a bunch of hardware product, and then we're done. We may get calls for support, but okay, that's fine. And I think the market expectation and our own strategy has now kind of turned that upside down, right? So when we think about where we want to be as a company, it's no longer just hardware, right? It's software and services that work well with our hardware, and potentially even new products that are purely a software or purely services, right? So what does that mean? That means we have to have new processes and new internal capabilities to support, new types of products we've never sold before, new types of business models that we've never had before, like subscription billing, right? Recurring revenue, services revenue, things that we've never had to deal with before, right? So it's a big change, both in terms of our products, the experiences our customers have, because now customers may want to maybe log onto a portal and have access to all of their Epson products, services, and software. And then, those internal capabilities that's required to manage that customer life cycle, and then also account for these new types of businesses. It's a lot of change, a lot of new ways of doing things. So I think before we kind of organize ourselves around these concepts of product experiences and digital processes, I think various departments were kind of struggling just to keep up. We weren't that well organized. But as these are interrelated, we recognize our need to build an internal kind of organization to support and prioritize our digital transformation projects, so that these things are moving in lockstep. So as we introduce products, we need to make sure we have the internal capabilities to support those products, as well as the right pieces in place to support that customer experience. Yeah, so it's a big challenge. I think it's a lot of internal change, but I think it's important that we organize in this way so that the priorities are understood and that the different groups can move in lockstep and get these initiatives going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's next?
That's me. So hello, Dr. Martin. Hello, Mohammed, Dr. Lin, and hi class. Michael, so thank you for being here. I think it's really nice to have a Zoom meeting like this, because I think it's a reminder of why we're still in this program. I think we all strive to maybe one day be in your position, and from the information that you've shared with us, it requires a lot of knowledge. And so I think this program is really preparing us to have those skills. So thank you. It keeps me motivated. So I'm representing Team 6, and that's Tram, Vianney, and George. And so our question is about big data. And so we want to know, how does Epson use big data to compete in the market today? Can you please give us some examples? That's our first question.
Okay, great. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I think, we came from a place where we just sold hardware boxes through distribution and retail, right? So we didn't necessarily feel like we needed or had a lot of customer data. But if you think about now focused on the end user of our products and how the customers use our products, we recognize that to digitally transform ourselves, we need to actually focus on our customers, no longer the channel. Our customer is really the end user of our product, right? And we sell both consumer products, right? So the printers you can buy, and the projectors you can buy at Best Buy, and then we have some label presses or industrial printers that are the size of small rooms, that industrial companies use for printing applications and whatnot. All of those devices, as they become smarter and as we build more capability into those devices, they start giving us information, IoT data, right? So device usage data, bunch of metrics on our most sophisticated, large, industrial machines. There are, a bunch of sensors that tell us a lot about these machines and how they're being used, and so that's all data that we are collecting, that we're using to support our customers. So I think for big data, that allows us to first better serve our customers, but also create opportunities for additional revenue through things like proactive service, right? So being able to identify on a machine certain parts that have, certain life cycles in terms of, before they need to be replaced, instead of them breaking and then the customer being down and then calling us and then us sending out a technician to fix the printer, we can actually offer proactive service where, hey, your part is about to go under, or it's showing signs that it's not operating within spec. We can send somebody out to help you before your machine goes down, right? Because for industrial companies, especially that use our products, any downtime means lost revenue for them. So for us to be able to keep their machines up, 24/7, that's very important, right? So that's one use of data now that we're able to apply and provide that value-added service to the customer. And, it gives us incremental revenue, right? So that's one way we use that data. The other way we really use this data is to gain a deep understanding of our customers. So before, I think in the old days, we sold to our channel and we were done with that. Now, as we are tracking customers through the life cycle, pre-sales engagement to the sale of the product to now use of that product, right? So we have some information around how customers are using our product. We can use that information to improve our products, right? So we know certain things about how our product's being used, or certain challenges that people have in terms of using our website. We actually have the ability to watch how people are interacting with the site, where they're clicking, where they're looking, right? And it's through collection of that data to be able to tell. Again, it sounds a little creepy, but we use it in the right way. But it helps us make the website better, right? So we see, for example, we improved our checkout process on our website because we are able to collect this data in aggregate. We looked at, looks like people are always tripping up on these pages as they're going through this checkout process. We understood what was wrong with that particular design of the site, and we were able to improve it. And that made it a better experience for our customers, and also made it better for us to improve the conversion of that customer to actually buying the product, which helps us, which means more sales for us, right? So, so that's just another example. As we're able to now collect this data, we're able to have that continuous feedback loop, whether it's our hardware products, whether it's our website, whether it's our ability to deliver service. We're able to kind of go into that continuous improvement cycle, right? And I think recently we've also started thinking about, how do we keep customers for life, right? Think about doing that. How do we make sure that when somebody who buys an Epson printer, as their printer ages out and needs to be replaced, that we keep that customer for life. So again, proactively identifying, here's the typical life cycle of this type of model of printer, so we can, before they go out, think about going to the store and potentially picking up a competitive product, we market to them and say, hey, we know your printer is, near time for replacement. Here's maybe a discount for a replacement Epson printer, or some way to catch them before they make a move that we don't want them to make.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it does sound like a eliminating, instead of waiting for the problem to happen, big data allows you to catch that way before. So it does allow you to save a lot of time of trying to investigate what is going on. We have another question, and that's what major improvements has Epson overcome with the assistance of data science?
Major improvements. Yeah, I think a lot of our use of IoT, because as much as we're aspirationally trying to get into software and services, obviously the bulk of our business is still hardware based. I think we've been able to learn a lot more about certain hardware issues in the field. As much as we can test our devices before they're deployed to customers, it's only once things are out in the fields and the millions of units where you start to see some patterns with failures, or so again, we're able to be much faster about that feedback loop and incorporating revisions into our designs based on these things that we're seeing in the market. And then we're also able to identify if something does need to be replaced, that we are able to proactively, again, communicate to customers that, hey, there's an issue with the printer you bought or the device you bought, and we can replace certain components before they fail. Right? So again, I think customers we've gotten some really good feedback about that, because customers are really appreciative of the fact that we were proactive before the device failure to make sure that they don't have a device issue. So that's been a big help for us in terms of being proactive about these types of repairs, and not having it become a customer, being upset at Epson because they have some problem.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Grace Maeshiro. I'm coming from Team 7. We have Rico, Jennifer, and Samuel. And our question is, what trends does Epson need to be aware of? What future predictions are necessary to stay ahead of? Thank you.
Yeah. Trends. So trends, I think one thing for me as Todd that's really top of mind these days is the whole era of security and privacy, right? It's just moving very, very fast. The trend there is, you have a huge growing wave of threats, continue to be more sophisticated. You have, there's like organized crime on the web, right? A lot of these hacker groups are really well organized, well funded. They run like companies, or structured organizations. So it's no longer like these, just these onesies, twosies, but they are literally organized crime online that going after different groups, and they create tools that help others do the same thing, right? So, and then compliance is rapidly evolving, right? We talked about privacy, we talked about cybersecurity laws and whatnot. And I think those are continuing to evolve at a very rapid pace, and staying compliant with them, staying ahead of that is very much a kind of a mega trend that we need to continue to stay on top of. The other big trends that I think about, connected devices, right? So again, the rapid proliferation of IoT, which has different implications there. One of it also related to security and privacy, which is IoT devices are notoriously insecure and become a vector for breaches. So, how do we engineer our products to make sure they are secure? Again, in the old days, none of our devices were really connected devices. So they were kind of standalone. We didn't have to worry about security. Printers are also known for being notoriously insecure as well. So how do we make these things secure and keep our customers safe? And that's a big question and challenge. But on the other part of connected devices is now these devices have a lot more capability. So what are the implications as thinking about our devices no longer being a standalone device, but being part of an ecosystem of connected devices, right? So making sure our devices are easy to use, work well with other platforms. That's a big kind of challenge in terms of integration, certification, testing, making sure that we're thinking about not just our own product, but then how does it interplay with other devices? The consumer expectation, everything works with Alexa, everything works with Google Assistant. Some of these major technology platforms, that's a big, rapidly evolving question for us as well, right? And then, I think a lot about customer experience. meaning that, it's not enough just to provide something that, works functionally. Like I can print something, but how do we make that an easy experience? How do we make it something that the customer actually is delighted by, right? And I think that's the bar that these major technology companies have set, right? The expectation that technology should be easy to use and should be delightful and should reduce friction in your life, right? So again, that means that typically means that that device is connected to other companies, products, and other platforms. We need to kind of think about how do we do that in a way that is secure and easy. So I think Epson, I think we need to up the bar on customer experience, right? Like our apps, our user interfaces, etc. That's a difficult challenge for a traditional hardware device maker.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Who do we have now?
We're next. Hey, Michael, Emmanuel here from Team 8. Thanks for the information, by the way. We've just got a couple of questions on hiring. Yeah. So I'll try to combine some of them, but the first one, what advice do you have for someone looking to get into this line of work? So specifically MBA graduates, which we will be.
So when you say this line of work, you mean, I think, the data science field, or
data science, data analytics, I think.
Yeah, I think in general, if you look at the trend, I think just a broad understanding of technology is really going to be table stakes for the modern executive. I think it's no longer an option. It's no longer okay for, whether you're a finance executive or a marketing executive or sales executive, you need to know technology. I think that's table stakes. I think you can't say, I'm going to leave it for the tech guys. You'll have a big blind spot if you do that, right? It's just technology is so integrated into everything these days, right? It's the central nervous system of a corporation, right? Your systems and technology. And you need to have a basic understanding and appreciation for how it works. You don't need to be the guy doing the plumbing, but you need to know it, because I think it's what allows you to devise new business models and new ways of thinking and new products. Because those are, if you look at companies like Uber or Tesla, they took old stodgy industries, they turned it on its head, right? Because of application of technology and new business, and they were able to create new business models and ecosystems of things that work together. So to me, that just technology is so important. I'm so glad to see that your MBA program has that component, because I do think it is a necessary component, right? And you're seeing now a lot of CIOs and CTOs becoming CEOs of companies. I think that will just continue to accelerate, as companies digitally transform. So in terms of analytics specifically, when I think about analytics, so you have kind of hardcore data analysts, right? That are, I think you need to, and I think that those guys will typically have, real data analytics backgrounds, like, statistics and what some of the other kind of analytical applied mathematics background. And I don't think that's what you're asking about. I think you're probably asking more about what is the appropriate level of knowledge that you need to have as an MBA student, so somebody hoping to be in some sort of management position have. So I think you should understand the basics of how to work with data and things like, basic background statistics, which again, I think is part of any MBA program. So I think you'll have that foundation. But I think really, if you think about data, how you apply data in the business context, it's really about getting insight from that data, right? Because any company now, and with big data and whatnot, having the data is no longer the problem, right? I think in the old days, maybe getting the data was challenging and difficult out of systems, and there wasn't a lot of processing power, on the compute side to get to compile that data. Now that's not the constraint, right? You have probably actually an overwhelming amount of data. The challenge would be to get insight and value out of that data, right? So to me, that's, if I look at the combination of kind of MBA and data science, it's really about how do I think about the data I need and getting insights out of that data, interpreting that data, and being able to tell a story around that data, right? I think that's where I think that combination of MBA and data analytics skill set is really valuable, because you need to even to ask the right question. I think is something that's not necessarily obvious, right? So be able to tell the story with your data, but also understand data enough so that you are not lying. And when I say that, if you don't, because data misused can be very dangerous, right? If you don't know, you may even be telling lies or half-truths unintentionally because you don't understand the basics of statistics, something that's statistically significant versus something that is not, right? Your interpretation becomes incorrect because you didn't apply the rigors of how to use that data in interpreting that data, right? That to me, you need that base knowledge. But being able to, if you have that rigor, you have that information, to be able to ask the right questions and then interpret that data to get the insight. I think that's where that bridge, I think that's the more rare skill set. That's the more, you can argue, more important skill set to some degree, because again, every business has more data than they know what to do with. I think they have much fewer people that know what to do with that data and can get value out of that data. I'll say, my company is certainly in that position where I think we need people that have the business background to be able to ask the right questions and be able to apply that data and be able to get some valuable insight out of that data to create business value at the end of the day, right? To be able to say, you know what, I'm seeing this problem or this insight from this data that we have. Here's what it means in terms of what we need to do around our product, or here's maybe a new business opportunity based on what I'm seeing, right? I think that skill set, I think, is really important, be able to ask those right questions and be able to get that insight. So storytelling, but using data properly, because I feel like probably more often than not, a lot of companies also take data and then are telling the wrong story, or coming to the wrong conclusion, which is, can also be very dangerous.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I think that, Michael, thank you. I think that you answered the second part of the question I had, which was about data analytics and the points to emphasize. So I think you went through that pretty well.
Okay, good.
With that, so on the hiring side, what technical language should be included on the resume to be marketable? Like, what are you guys looking for?
Yeah. So again, I don't think any of you are interested in being kind of the hardcore just data guys, right? Because I think it depends on the. So I tell this to my team in IT also, which is some people get really hung up in like, oh, what languages do I need to learn? What systems, what specific systems do I need to know so that I can be hired, right? That to me is a bit short-sighted in the sense that, you know, I've been around long enough where, you know, technology will change, right? I started doing programming in COBOL. Not many of you probably have even seen COBOL code, which is to say, that was probably really important when I started, but that's not that important now, right? So I think, especially if you're not looking to do hardcore technical work, it's less important of a question. I think your fundamental skills around storytelling, communications, knowing how to use data, those are more kind of long-term transferable skills to have. I think for me, like actually a really important, well, you don't think of it as a programming language, but Excel, like advanced Excel knowledge is really important, because I think at the end of the day, as fancy as some of these tools are out there, Excel is going to be the thing that, you know, most people use on the desktop for, you know, data, and you can do a lot with Excel to do data analysis, right? And if you're able to do certain things there, you don't have to wait for the IT guy or the, you know, the hardcore data science guy to help you get meaning out of your data. So to me, that's a really good, you know, if you're looking for a specific technical skill to have, I think that will pay for itself in spades. And I think if you are interested in doing the hardcore data science side of it, you know, there are certain, you know, I think you guys can, again, each company will use different tools, which is why I don't like this idea of, oh, I need to know this one tool. And there are certain tools that are more popularly used these days, and I'm sure you know about them. So in so much as you want to get a job doing that, I think you should maybe, you know, then you should take a class or whatnot to get yourself familiar with that. But in my mind, that's not necessarily what I think most of you are looking for, being MBA students. So
yeah, I think more of a broad scope rather than in the weeds technical.
Yeah. So then I wouldn't say there's not necessarily any kind of technical language, or, you know, so when I'm looking for MBAs that work with data, I'm not gonna say, oh, they need to have this particular package, you know, unless I'm looking for somebody that's actually working in that tool, then I'm probably not looking for one of you, right? So
yeah, that makes sense. That was all of our questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to.
So I just want to open it up. Does anybody have any additional questions that you'd like to ask Michael before the end of the session?
Can I ask one?
Sure.
All right. So since we're talking about management accounting, so we're in this defect, you know, warranty. I'm just thinking, you talk a lot about data usage with customer side, right? Customer satisfaction, customer usage habit. So any data on the production side? So how did you guys use it? So
in terms of manufacturing and whatnot, right? So I think manufacturing traditionally has been fairly data driven, right? I think, you know, because it's, you know, you try to get efficiencies. It's a lot of quantifiable metrics. So as an operational discipline, I think they've actually been very data driven from very early on, right? At least the companies that do the best type of manufacturing. So I mean, I think our use of data there, I don't know, has changed that much in recent years. I think it's always been fairly data driven. It's been fairly quantitative.
Do you keep a defect rate comparison? Do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the standard production metrics that you study from your textbooks, those are things that we practice as a discipline, right? Because again, it really is very, very much.
Oh, I think he froze.
Yeah.
Huh. I think he's froze. So I just sent him a text. Let's see if he. So in the meantime, what do you guys do? Are there any other questions that you would like to ask him?
A question. He was asking about industry standards and regulatory standards, and how they got to be compliant with them. So I was wondering, like, is there any, who sets these standards, and like, do they use any other resources besides internal resources to follow them?
Well, I think he just got out and he's probably come back because he was frozen. Oh, he's,
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I'm back.
Great.
I'm back on my phone because I think my home internet just pooped out on me.
Oh, so we have a student, Anna would like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Yes, so you were talking about industry standards and regulatory standards, and how you have to be compliant with them. So I was wondering, who sets these standards, and like, do you use any anything besides internal checkers to follow them?
Yeah, so I think, that's a broad kind of compliance question. I think, the industry, so when you mentioned industry standards, are you talking about when I mentioned about cybersecurity standards? Correct. So there are certain, like organizations like NIST or CIS frameworks that are kind of commonly used by companies, adopted by companies. They're just, put out by organizations. Some of these are like nonprofit or industry organizations. So in any kind of, so for cybersecurity, that's kind of two popular ones. From a actual audit perspective, there are certain standards around, IT GC or IT general controls. That's related to kind of accounting and regulatory standards that are actually, published kind of standards out there, right? So they're kind of well documented and followed by companies that are public in particular. In terms of checking, I think your other part of the question was checking on how we're doing relative to the standards. We have both internal audit as well as external audit, right? So we have an internal audit group that makes sure we are compliant, right? And then they work with our external auditors. So certainly in accounting, we have an external audit, right? And then a part of that is an IT audit. And on the security side, I do annual security audits. I pay an outside company to audit our organization and then give me a report on, where we have gaps or deficiencies related to our security practices, right? So I think certainly it's a mix of internal and external, and some of these are even required if you're a public company. So, or it's just good practices even if you're private. So.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Michael, so Emmanuel talked about like what they look for, but I just have a question based on your experience, what is like the one thing that when you say you hire an MBA student, someone that just got their MBA, in what ways do you find that someone that has their MBA, how do they stand out in a company like Epson? And what is the one thing that you wish maybe MBA programs would teach or maybe address a little more?
Yeah, so I think MBA, so in general, I think for a key skill set is the ability to communicate and both written and in presentation form. To be clear in your communications. I think that's, you can be a very smart person, but you can't communicate. I think people will not be able to take advantage of your ideas and your brains. So I think that's, communication skill, being able to distill complex ideas into, something that's understandable and kind of a story. I think that's a key skill set. I think being analytical in your approach. I think that's also another key thing that we look for when it comes to MBA students, being able to kind of look at a problem and be able to show that you had a thoughtful approach and getting to a conclusion that is supported by facts and data. Okay. In terms of where I see, I'm a little biased here. I think students should have, again, that solid technical background in terms of understanding what technology can do and the role of technology in a company. I still feel like a lot of times people think, oh, we have the business and then we have IT, right? It's really, IT is part of the business and it's the central nervous systems of any company. So you need to, for you to be a good manager or executive, you need to understand how to exploit that for competitive advantage. Because it's just reality these days. Every company is digital. There's no non-digital company. Even in the most traditional industries now, you have, technology is a big part of everything.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a quick question. Michael, I know you've touched a lot on cybersecurity already.
Yeah.
And you did mention phishing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in the past couple of months, they're getting a lot better. You can't filter everything out. How do you keep staff current? Do you provide them training? How do you teach them to keep current in all the different things that are being sent our way?
Yeah, so we have a few ways to attack this. One is there's technology out there to filter phishing emails, right? So so we certainly have that in place, and it does a pretty good job. It's not 100% foolproof. So the other ways we attack that problem is through cybersecurity training. So we require all employees on a quarterly basis go through cybersecurity training, and we have different materials, and they have to pass kind of a small test. It's a quiz. It's not anything overly burdensome, but we try to make it frequent enough to reinforce those ideas, so that it's always top of mind for them. We always have something about security in our weekly company newsletter, so that also continues, keeps things top of mind for our employees. And then the last thing we do is on a monthly basis, we actually send out phishing emails internally. So we actually we look at kind of the popular, phishing emails of that period, and we have a mock phishing email that we send internally. And when somebody clicks on it, then it takes them to the website. Says, if this had been a real phishing email, you would have been compromised. And then it takes them to this security training website. And then we also give them the ability to report phishing. So we have a button that we put on people's Outlook toolbars that if they think something is a phishing email, they can click on it. So if it happens to be one of the internal ones, then it will congratulate them on correctly identifying a phishing email. And if it's a real one, obviously our security team gets it and can evaluate it, right? So as a two-pronged purpose. We also gamified this in our organization. So we kind of made a little contest, give people prizes. Then we also kind of have a department, phishing, who had the least number of clicks to the internal phishing email. We kind of report that out just to keep it a little bit fun for people too. People get competitive. So you got to try a few different things to kind of keep it top of mind for people. And then you have certain tools in place to kind of continuously train people, because it really is a continuous training thing we found. We had to keep on top of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So any last questions?
Yeah, I had a question. So I know you talked briefly about having applications, but I think more and more as a consumer, I'm starting to realize I absolutely hate digital clutter. More and more companies now are requiring you to download applications, and it's I have so many different applications. So I like the fact that you did mention that you're trying to see how does Epson's app talk to a Google or something like that. But I don't know really how to direct this question, but yeah, how are you guys combating that digital clutter for consumers?
Yeah, I think when we think about our products, in terms of it's been we're still on this journey. We're not perfect by any means, but we think about how do we reduce friction for the consumer, right? So when a consumer just wants to print something, I don't want to force them to, you have to download the Epson printing app, and then you have to go to, and create an account. And once you create an account, then you need to do this and to print something, right? So how do we just make it so that they can get to that printout as quickly as possible, right? Or for a projector, how do we make it so that they can just set it up without reducing friction, without barriers in the way? So over time, we've tried to, go to where people already are using or already have established relationships, right? So you can print, our printers, you can actually print with Alexa, right? So you can actually just speak and print something. So it's an interesting challenge, because it does mean that we're dealing with things outside of our direct control. But I think it is the right thing to do, because I think ultimately it makes our products easier to use. So we're still on that journey, obviously, and I think it's something we think about. But for our products, we also try to not necessarily reduce digital clutter, but we're actually trying to help people now reduce physical clutter with some of our scanners. You're probably too young, but we have people with large shoe boxes of photos. So we actually introduced this scanner that we call it the Fast Photo. It actually scans at a very high rate old photos and then turns into digital pictures. So we try to kind of look at where we can solve people's problems. That was kind of a unique product that we created that addressed a particular market need. But that's physical clutter. So I'm not sure if I answered your question very well, but
no, you did. I thank you. I think it kind of sold me on some Epson products too, because I don't actually own any, but I didn't know that you can connect to Alexa or and I was looking at your website too for the receipt stuff. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is this it? All right. Well, Michael, I really want to thank you for taking this time on a Saturday.
No problem.
So just one last thing. If the students have any other additional questions that they think of after today, would it be okay if they sent you?
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Martin. I think, yeah, absolutely. I think you have my email, so feel free to distribute and, you know, for the students, and thank you. I hope hopefully some of the things I said at least made some sense to you. I don't know everything, but I'm just, you know, here to share my experiences. Hopefully it was of value, and please, if you do have questions or other follow-up, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to you know, correspond with you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right.
Have a great Saturday.
Thanks, everyone. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just a couple things before you take off. First, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what happened with Marco. He's turns out he needs to focus a little bit more on his rehabilitation. So he's leaving the program. He will be returning next year and picking up where he left off. So if you get a chance to, you know, send him an email or something, wish him well. I'm sure he would really love it. It's been a tough time for him. So, and he was really happy when he got the flowers. And then I guess a couple days later, you guys sent him a basket. So it's like sort of kept him, you know, kept his mood up and helped him. So thank you for doing that. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put together an e-card, a thank you e-card for Michael, and I'll send you the link. And if everybody can, you know, just put a little note saying thank you or whatever for him, that would be great. And if you do have any questions that you would like to correspond with Michael, I will, actually I could do that right now. I can put it in the chat box and you're welcome to use it as you heard. Oh. Okay, so there's his email address if you want to talk with him. You know, he's someone good to know, you know, especially if you're interested in Epson, he's someone good to know. So I would encourage you that if you are interested, stay in contact with him. And then another thing is I'm going to put together a short little Qualtrics survey to send to you guys with maybe 4 or 5 questions just to get an evaluation from you about doing this. This is our first time. This is we're looking at continuing this, maybe doing 2 a semester. 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. So any feedback that you have, please let me know. So I'll send you the survey probably Monday. So if you could fill it out and then send it back to me, that would be great. And the last thing, how surprised were you when Michael said the #1 skill he looks for is soft skills? You know, soft skills.
Not surprising.
I wasn't surprised.
You weren't surprised.
Not surprised at all.
Good. So one of the things you keep in mind is you're going to go through this program doing a lot of presentations, and you want to listen to the advice that you get from your faculty in terms of, you know, improving your presentation skills, learning how to communicate, and then things like, I know you probably learned it in Mohammed's classes, you know, how do you visualize data? How do you take data and tell a story around it? Because that's another soft skill. You're combining your quantitative skills with soft skills to be able to tell a story, and that's very important. Also, there are some things out there, like, you know, at Amazon, they don't allow PowerPoint presentations internally. So you have to be able to get up and do a presentation without having the sort of, they call it the crutch of PowerPoint slides. So that's really, you know, think about that when you're going through the program, some of the things that you can do to improve your soft skills. And by the way, we all have room for improvement. Okay, I'm not just saying you, I mean, I have room for improvement. I'm sure, you know, Ping and Mohammed probably feel like they have room for improvement too. I mean, we all do. There's all, so that's an important thing to practice. Think about it when you're writing your papers. If you're writing a report or a project or something like that, one of the skills that is lacking many times is the idea that you do a project or you write up a report and you turn in the first draft. And that first draft isn't written very well. And so, you know, take the time to go back and review what you've written and improve your grammar, or check for typos or misspellings, those kind of things. So these are all things that you can do as you go through the program, right? Okay, thank you so much. Ping, thank you so much for helping with this, and Mohammed, thank you too. I mean, I appreciate all the help that you've both been for this. Other than that, I think I'm going to be meeting with one person, and if she just wants to stay here, we can just meet here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
It
have
was nice